Hi, it's been a little while, hasn't it? There's no big explanation, I just have a job now, I don't have so much time for making videos. That being said, I'm a game developer, that's what I do for work, and so I'm still very much enjoying playing and analysing games. I thought perhaps I should make a monthly short segment where I briefly talk about what I've been playing over the past few weeks. I've played a lot of stuff recently that either had an aspect of its design or even the whole game jump out at me and leave me wanting to talk about it, but these days I don't really have time to produce a full-length video going into everything that interests me about a given game, especially when that can include lots of time for research before I've even focused in on a specific thesis, which is why I fear I'm likely not going to be able to do a lot of the projects I now want to do. Anyhow, welcome to a new, hopefully monthly segment, What I Played. This is where I'll give a brief rundown of the major things I played over the past month. And the definition of major is a little loose, but it's pretty much anything meeting the criteria I saw the end credits, or I put more than 3-ish hours into it, or it just left a strong impression on me. For instance, during June I did a few sessions of Deep Rock Galactic with some buddies, and while it's definitely fun, I've not yet had time to really sink my teeth into it, so I won't be talking about it today. Final note, I'll be including spoiler-free gameplay when I can, but in the event that I don't have the game installed, and it'll take too long to install just to grab 10 minutes of footage, I'll use the game's trailers instead, so I hope that's alright with everyone. For the first episode, I am going to cheat a bit and touch on the end of May, because it means I get to talk about Disco Elysium. I started playing Disco Elysium quite a while ago now. I spent my first 10 hours with the game sort of bouncing around. It wasn't that I struggled to get into it, but more that I struggled to progress. To compound the problem, it's a densely wordy game, and so I kept picking it up, looking at all the quests I didn't know where to start with, and putting it down again. Then one warm Saturday morning in the waning days of May, the internet was down, and my folks were out of town for the weekend, so I decided to sit down with a cup of coffee and really get on with it. No distractions. In that time, I experimentally roundhouse kicked a racist just to see if I could, and got lucky with a dice roll, admittedly after failing a couple of times, met a union boss who I immediately decided I hated, and discovered the second area of the game. And from there the hooks were in. I played for the entire afternoon, and then again the next day. From there I made steady progress every evening that I could, until on the 7th of June I finished the game. It was incredible. I'm not going to get into spoilers here, and anyone who knows Disco Elysium already knows that it's a cult classic, but if you're not familiar, DE is an isometric detective RPG in the style of something like classic Fallout. Gameplay mainly consists of talking to different characters and looking for clues to solve a mystery, but that kind of takes a backseat to the fact that, to quote Jacob Geller's video on the game, which I'll link below, your character is on the tail end of a bender that's lasted either 3 days or several years, depending on how you measure it. And so you've woken up with no memory of anything. The mystery you're there to solve is a murder, but you find yourself also having to solve the mystery of who you were, who you are, where you are, what you're going to do now you're there, and who you want to be. Do you believe that people can change, or will learning who you once were doom you to become that man again? It's a fantastically well-written game. The characters are, each and every one of them, interesting, textured, and often strange. Each of them is beautifully voice-acted in a way that just sucked me into the world, and the world itself has so much character and history to learn about. Even the mechanics seem to have a personality and character of their own, and many of them actually do, with your various RPG skills being facets of your now shattered mind. Disco Elysium is, for me, embodied by a moment after I had to tell a woman that her husband had been found dead. It was a beautifully performed scene. It was sad and sympathetic and hard to play, and I got through it. And I stepped outside, and the horns that you heard at the beginning of this segment started to play. The track is called Instrument of Surrender, and I started to cry. It's an incredibly powerful game when it wants to be, and it's an incredibly silly game when it wants to be. I could spend hours talking about everything that makes Disco Elysium so special, but I really don't want to get into spoilers here, so I'll just instead move on and say, play Disco Elysium. After finishing this go, I was hyped up. I was ready for something high concept, and weird, and inscrutable, a proper mystery story to sink my teeth into. And while my Steam wishlist is filled to the brim with detective games of all sorts, one of the games that's been in my backlog for the longest is The Outer Wilds, so I grabbed it while it was on sale and started it up. Now, I'm proud to say I went into this game pretty much blind, and if you haven't played it yet, I recommend you do the same. Unlike Disco Elysium, I've not yet finished The Outer Wilds, though I'm definitely into it. The storytelling is largely done through chunks of text, which, while they're smaller than the paragraphs of Disco, are giving me the same problem of having to make myself boot the game up. That said, when I can convince myself to start playing, I inevitably have a very good time with it. The game is largely focused around exploration, and while I love that fact, having multiple planets to fly to with no real idea of which ones I should go to next or what to do when I get there is proving to be daunting, and I'm struggling to really get into it. Without wishing to spoil anything, the game divides itself up quite neatly into what I'll call days. As a result of that structure, it's quite easy to play a couple of days and then just close the game, at least for me. It's a game to which I think the Subnautica system of progression, where you find new materials and tools to craft through exploration, could really work, though that would require a fundamental redesign of the game, which I think would overall be for the worse. What I'm trying to say is I like the game, but I find it hard to engage with for long periods of time because there's nothing really moment to moment that keeps me going. There's long periods of downtime. I'm definitely planning to see it through to the end though, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it all plays out. This one's pretty different from the last couple of games, but I replayed Resident Evil 7 over a weekend, around the time the RE4 remake came out. I played it through once before, a few years ago, but it felt like I was ready to go through it again. It's a short enough game. My playthrough clocked in around 10 hours, but I did spend 2 of those hours running in circles because I couldn't figure out where to go to progress. It's a really good atmospheric survival horror game, really tense in places. It still frightened me despite having played it before, although the big goo monsters, they don't do anything for me. It's like, okay, there's a guy, I'll shoot him. But, yeah, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre bits, incredible. I'm glad to have replayed it, so much so that I will probably replay it again sometime soon, but probably not before I go through the RE2 make and Resident Evil 8.
What the fuck are you?
Shut up and listen if you want to stay alive.
Six years have passed since that horrendous incident.
I played through this the week after doing RE7, so I wrapped up Resident Evil 7 on Sunday night and got this installed while I was at work on the Monday. I then played it through about a chapter a night for the week. I'd not played this before, and I'm not ashamed to admit that the controls really did take some getting used to for me. I struggled with them a fair bit in my first couple of hours, but weirdly not in a frustrating way. Like, it was still really fun, which I didn't expect having seen gameplay of it. It looked just clunky, but it still controls really nicely. I mostly wanted to play through this because I'd heard it was one of the best Resident Evil games, up there with 7, but I'd not gotten around to it. Then, in the lead up to the RE4 make, the game went on sale for about £4, so I grabbed it. Now, I'd heard that it was a silly, campy action game instead of tight horror like Resident Evil 7, but I wasn't quite prepared for how accurate that statement was. I went into it expecting something that was kind of like Resi 7, but that was sillier and maybe had more combat sections. I wasn't prepared for a large ball of utter silliness, though, which a faint line can be traced to Resident Evil 7. It's fantastic. It's so much fun. It's a really, really fun action game, and still manages to be genuinely unnerving at times. The guys with the leeches that you have to use the thermal scope to kill terrified me. The Roaring Twenties are looking to be the revival of handheld gaming. Between emulation devices, the Steam Deck, and Nintendo fans waiting with bated breath to see if the success of the Switch is going to be another Wii U situation or not. But while everyone else looks to the future of handheld gaming, I have turned to look at its past. So at the start of June, I bought and promptly hacked a PS Vita. In my first month with it, I've found a few things that bug me, but primarily I'm in love with the thing. It packs a remarkable amount of power for something that's not much bigger than my phone. One of the two games I've been playing on it this past month is Rogue Legacy, which I have developed a minor addiction to. It's a roguelike where each run is contextualized as the next generation of a very long-running family, with each character having different random traits and quirks which make gameplay more interesting. So far on my Vita save file, I've beaten 2 of the 4 bosses and will hopefully get to the other 2 before too long. That said, just running dungeons is insanely satisfying and I really am enjoying it. It's perfect for the handheld form factor, as I can just do a couple of runs while I'm waiting for something to compile or hanging out in the kitchen waiting for something to cook. It's so good for the pick up and play form factor. The other game I've been playing through on the Vita is my childhood favourite Ratchet & Clank. Now, I made an hour-long video essay on why the remake of this game sucked compared to the original, and it's footage from that video that you'll be seeing here. During the PS Vita's lifespan, Sony did a thing called the Cross-Buy Initiative, where buying something from the PS3 meant that you got the Vita version, and as long as it had a Vita version. Fortunately, the Ratchet & Clank HD collection were part of that bundle, so when I picked up the trilogy for that video a couple of years back, I got the Vita versions of games too, which didn't mean anything to me at the time, but oh lord it does now. It meant as soon as I had the Vita I could just install the games and start playing. I have played through the entirety of the first game in occasional sessions over the last month. In fact, I was tackling the final boss this morning, although I will admit I haven't beaten him yet, despite how many times I've played this game through. I've noticed a couple of issues. The touchpad on the back of the Vita acts as the L2 and R2 buttons, but only in the hoverboard sections as far as I can tell, so I found that as soon as I jumped up, I would go into trick mode and then smash it to the ground, because I couldn't get Ratchet to leave trick mode. Eventually I figured out what was causing it, but that was baffling for a while. Unsurprisingly, the Vita's little thumbsticks do not control as well as a proper controller would, but I don't know, it's a price I'm willing to pay to have Ratchet & Clank in my pocket at any given moment. I have had a really good time replaying this and remembering how good the soundtrack is. The music to Ratchet & Clank is so good. If you've got a PS2, a PS3, or a PS Vita, or an emulator for any of the above, I highly recommend tracking down a copy of Ratchet & Clank. You can get it on the PS3 shop while that's still open. You can get it on the PS Vita shop while that's still open. If you've got a hacked Vita, I think it's on Vita PKG, the homebrew thing. You can get it all over the shop. It's a really fun 3D platformer with some excellent combat to boot. In keeping with both the theme of handheld gaming and 3D platformers from the year 2002, I've been playing through Super Mario Sunshine. In November of 2022, I finally got around to buying a Nintendo Switch, and I've since played through Breath of the Wild and Hollow Knight on it, and I picked up Super Mario 3D All-Stars. I got all 120 stars in Mario 64, and after taking a while to recover, I decided to go through Mario Sunshine just the same. It's been a long and harrowing experience. I'm about a quarter of the way done with it, and it's taken me a crushingly long time. I'll freely admit, I generally prefer games with a strong narrative, and this certainly isn't that. I've not developed any attachment to Flood, and I think I've seen half the cutscenes twice because I keep doing things out of order. But I have a real soft spot for tropical settings in games, and despite its seemingly cruel difficulty at times, I've been really enjoying just experiencing Mario Sunshine. It's a very comfy game, and it controls extremely well. I have the secret level music burned into my brain. It's the source of my nightmares, but, you know, it's fun. It's really fun. It plays especially well with the Switch Pro controller, so I've been largely playing it with that. Although I did have to take my girlfriend's brother to his, I think it was swimming. Anyway, whatever activity it was that he did, I ended up taking him to that one day. And because it was a long drive there and a long drive back, there was no sense in leaving. So I kicked my shoes off, sat in the back of my car with my Switch, and played like an hour of Mario Sunshine while I waited for him. Had a really good time with it. It was a really fun experience. A much more recent addition to my Switch collection, I picked this up towards the end of June, and so I've only put about 10 hours into it at this point. In that time, I've been thoroughly absorbed by a couple of other games as well, so it's been relegated to one of my on-the-go games more than one of my at-home games. Again, I'm not in love with the story and characters, but the quests where someone asks you for a specific type of Pokemon and you get to catch one and introduce them to their new partner are all quite sweet and tend to put a smile on my face. This isn't the first Pokemon game I've ever played. I got through most of Pokemon Emerald. I got about halfway through Pokemon Black? It was either Pokemon Black or White, one of those two. I got to the Electric Gym with the lady with the Emolga, and then she just kept kicking my ass and I couldn't get past that, so stopped playing. I got to the Elite Four in Pokemon Emerald when I stopped, and I used to watch the cartoon when I was younger. So I'm not a complete new player to Pokemon, but I will readily admit I generally just spend my time looking at the cute little guys. Like I have been getting a hell of a lot of mileage out of the ability to get my party out and just sit with them and take photos, and I have no shame in admitting that. You will be seeing photos of them like now, because cute little guys. Pokemon's one of those series that I never got really into, but I enjoy playing from time to time, and the new twists on gameplay that Pokemon Legends put on the series, I'm thoroughly enjoying. I'm probably going to pick up Brilliant Diamond. I know it's supposedly not very good, but the series I watched the most as a kid was Diamond and Pearl, so I do kind of want to play through that. But I've not finished Pokemon Legends yet, so you'll probably be hearing about it more in a month or so when I finish it. As I said earlier, I'm partial to a tropical setting, and pirates most of all. Assassin's Creed Black Flag remains one of my favourite games ever, and until I met Sea of Thieves, I didn't know of a pirate game that topped it. But I have spent a long time just sailing around getting up to mayhem in this game, both with friends and by myself. In the past couple of weeks, I learned that you can earn ancient coins, one of the premium currencies that's usually a microtransaction, by leveling up in the Pirate Pass. And while I refuse to spend any real-world money on it, if I just rank up enough, I should be able to get enough coins to buy a silly outfit for my monkey, and that would make me a very happy man. That's where most of my effort has gone recently, ranking up to get ancient coins to buy an outfit for my monkey. He's a Capuchin, but I call him Marmoset because I thought it was funny. I really like the way Sea of Thieves handles its core gameplay loop, because essentially everything that you can buy is cosmetic, no matter if you're paying real money for microtransactions or just saving up all of your gold for a cool hat. Players with 400 hours clocked don't have any particular gameplay advantage over players with 4 hours. Despite knowledge, of course. But it means that I find other players are much more willing to be silly in the game, because there's never really any real stakes. Usually it's people taking it too seriously that turns me off multiplayer games. Well, that and the fact that I'm violently antisocial. But there are lots of reasons I love Sea of Thieves. I think as a multiplayer game and social experience, it's absolutely fascinating. And I haven't seen much writing done about it in the same way, for instance, World of Warcraft has a bunch of writing done about it. Of course, it's not had anywhere near the cultural impact of WoW, but nonetheless, I think it's an interesting game to talk about it, and I think it's a lot of fun to play. And with that, we reach the end of everything that I've been playing over the past month or so. As we go into July, I'm looking forward to playing a lot more of Pokemon Legends and the Outer Wilds. I'm even hoping to finish the Outer Wilds if I've got time. I also started getting back into Elite Dangerous over the past couple of days. I nearly put it in this video, but realised I kind of started getting back into it in July, so I should give it a proper segment in the July video. I'm hoping to get around to playing Ratchet & Clank 2 over the next month, because I've never actually played it. I played the first game on the PS2 a bunch as a kid, and then I played a couple of the future games on the PS3, but never got around to playing 2 or 3. And seeing as I've got them on the go, now seems like a good time to give them a fair crack, so hopefully I'll be able to tell you about that at the start of August. I'm sure I'll play some other stuff. We are in the Steam summer sale after all. I recently started playing Chernobyl, but I haven't really formed much of an opinion on it yet, so that might be I just started playing Chernobyl, but I haven't really formed much of an opinion on it yet, so that's possibly going to be in the next video, depending on how into it I get. Hi-Fi Rush is pretty high on the list of games in my backlog, but I've still not got around to that either. I just know it's going to be a good time when I do. I might grab that when I finish the Outer Wilds. Anyway, what have you been playing in this past month? Let me know in the comments. I'm interested to hear what games people are enjoying recently. Always looking for recommendations of stuff to try. So, hopefully, I'll see you again in a month's time, and any silliness that appears in the middle. Yeah. Thanks for watching. Ciao.